Let me guess, you're staring at a Pinterest board, you just scroll, 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 and all the while you're thinking to yourself, how on earth am I going to transform all of these beautiful images into a space that's real and actually works for me? Well, I'm here to tell you, designers do not even look at Pinterest to start a project. That is one of the last things we do. So I'm going to teach you everything we do before even saving an inspo photo. By the end of this video, you will know how to approach your home design like a pro with confidence and clarity. So let's get started. Hi guys, I'm Louie. I'm an architect and interior designer, and on the Interiorist, I try to take the guesswork out of decor so that you can focus on creating a beautiful space that functions for your life. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into tip number one. So tip number one is that you need to define the program. And the program in an architecture context basically means a list of requirements and functionalities that will be in the space. So it's going to talk about everything the space needs in order to function and solve the problems of the people who will inhabit it. So for example, if you're thinking of an average family of four, the program might be something like, we need 4 or 3 bedrooms, one for each person, 3 baths. We're going to need a family room, a TV room, a home office, a gym. All of these things, all of these requirements and activities will help you define the function. So I'm going to give you 3 simple questions to kind of help you sort out and figure out what your program is. The first thing is, what happens here? So am I going to be studying? Am I going to be working, resting, working out? What will happen in the space, and how can I make the space more appropriate for that activity? The second question is, who? Who's going to be there? Who's going to use the space? So you want to consider things like, are there kids? Are there pets? Maybe elderly people or people with disabilities? Because the third thing is, what special requirements do I need for the activity and for the people? So for example, if you have pets in the space, maybe you want surfaces that are easy to clean and low maintenance. If you have someone with disabilities in the space, then you definitely want larger circulation. So instead of the regular 36 inches or 90 centimeters that you would give for a walkway, you're going to give them more space because they need that to get around comfortably. So it really is about defining the function of the space before you do anything else. And I just want to reflect on this for a second. I love things to look pretty. I love aesthetics. I don't do design because I don't want things to look good. I do, but the most important thing in design is not how they look, it's how they work. So that applies to your home as well. You want it to work well, and aesthetics will be a second moment. And that's when you can think about making everything pretty. Look, all is pretty. I love it. But first, we want function. All right, so let's go through some examples of how the program can influence your space, right? So maybe if you are a person who likes to host and you have a lot of gatherings in your home, well, you're going to want an energetic space. Maybe you're going to work with different levels and layers of lighting so that you can create different moods. You want comfortable seating so people can feel, comfy and have their conversations. You want side tables for drinks and snacks and things that are just kind of easy to place and easy to wipe down. If you are doing a family room, you want to go the comfy route. So you want to think of a big TV, a big sectional, nice, cozy rugs. And since people are in and out of that space all the time, maybe you want to keep it easy maintenance. So you want little baskets to kind of just tuck away the mess, like the blankets or pillows or remotes, and just push them away and out of sight. So you start to think of what you can do in that space to make it better. Or let's say you have a home office, right? So maybe you want silence, you want something a bit more directed towards focus and towards productivity. So something comfortable, ergonomic, so that you can spend lots of time sitting down or looking at your computer without breaking your back. You want light, you want good lighting so that you can focus on the tasks at hand. If you're an artist and you need a studio or something like that, if you are a fashion designer or an artist, you're going to need long, large tables to cut your fabric or to lay out your canvas and do your painting. So it really depends on the function. And the reason I'm giving you all these examples is because every time that you're going to design a space, you don't need to be designing a whole home to think about a program. Just a space on its own deserves a program because it will be the blueprint to making that space work well. And the better it works, the more comfortable it is for you. And the more comfortable it is for you, the more you want to be there. So function is important. And that's why the program matters. Now let's just sum up what you need to do your program. So I gave you 3 questions. You're going to take a piece of paper and you're going to start by writing down 3 to 5 activities that are going to take place in that room. So in my office, for example, I'm going to say I need to film, I need to work, and I need to have a place to relax while I'm doing all that. And next, you're going to say, who's going to have access to this? So I come in here, my kids come in here, my husband sometimes comes in here. So I have to start thinking of a way that I can kind of keep everything in place, even though people are coming in and out of the space all the time. And the final one is, are there any special requirements? So in the case of my office, I'll say, yes, I have filming. So I need a place for a tripod and for lights and a clean background where I can do my work. And that way, you start to see the place kind of take shape in your mind and how it's going to live and breathe before you look at how it's going to look and what color it's going to be and all that stuff. So, tip number 1, never forget the program. It is the most important. Okay, so tip number 2 is to consider the flow. Now, what that means is you have to consider walking paths. Now, architects, designers, we call it circulation or flow, but the idea is you need to know how people are going to move inside a space. So one thing we do is we start by mapping out all the entryways, the windows, and to just kind of map out those natural paths. So for example, if you're gonna look at your room, you know you're gonna come in through the door and you're gonna make your way to the bed, right? So what is in the path on the way to the bed? Are there things that you need? Are there things that are blocking you? Or for example, in your living room, you know that someone is going to come in through the door, they're going to go through your living room to get to the kitchen. So that area, that straight walk, or not straight walk, but that walk to your kitchen is the important thing. So you need to know, can I get through to my kitchen comfortably? So it really is about how people move inside the spaces, because let's just recap. We know what's going to happen in that space. We know who's going to be in that space. We know what special requirements we need for that space. Now we need to know how people will navigate the space. Before we start the 3rd tip, I really want to go over all the biggest mistakes I see when it comes to flow and circulation. And I think it's important not only to help you avoid the mistakes, but also to give you a true idea of what designers are talking about when we're talking about circulation and flow. Because the truth is, you can have a gorgeous space. You can have it all mapped up, the perfect sofa, the perfect wall colors, wallpaper, texture, light fixtures, everything is spectacular. But if you can't move properly in there, if your body isn't comfortable in the way that it gets around, you're just not going to like the space. You won't even stay there. And flow and circulation is such an important part of comfort. That's why it's so important. So now let's go over those mistakes so that you don't make them yourself. Here's some of the biggest mistakes I see with flow, and I have mentioned this in previous videos, but I will mention it again because it is important. Pushing large furniture against every wall and leaving an empty center. This makes the room feel static. It does not improve flow. It just kind of feels like you pushed everything away and you flattened out the room. So pull it away from the walls, because that way you get circulation, you get pathways, and you'll feel a lot better. Next is placing a sofa or table right in the path of an entryway, creating bottlenecks. This is why I said you need to observe where the entry points are, where the windows are, and basically how you're going to move through that space, because you don't want any objects, any furniture blocking the pathways. Next is overfilling the space with too many pieces, leaving no room to move comfortably. Just because you have space doesn't mean you have to fill it up. Remember, you also need room for circulation. Guys, I will tell you a story now. One of the first projects I did when I was studying architecture, we had to do this hospital, and it was so complicated because you can imagine it was a huge program and all the different parts of the hospital have to be, well connected, and they have to flow and they have to function properly. So it was a very complicated project. I wasn't the only student who had a hard time with it, but it was a learning experience. And I'll tell you why. I calculated all the dimensions of the rooms, the spaces, everything, like, how much you need for this kind of room or that kind of room. And I put it all together and I created the volume, which is one of the first things we do with architecture. We're going to start volume studies to see how the building would look. And I did the volume study based on all my calculations in size and square footage. And I did not calculate for circulation. So when I started sketching all that stuff up on 3D, I realized I have no space for hallways, which was a crass mistake. So don't be me, okay? Remember the flow, remember the circulation. So here's how you can solve those problems. You want to allow for circulation paths of 30 to 36 inches or 70 to 90 centimeters wide. This is a comfortable walking space for any average person. However, if you have people with mobility issues or maybe special needs that will be using the space, consider larger walkways to make the space more comfortable for them too. Next, you can float furniture when possible to create zones, so a seating area separate from a reading nook. And by creating designated zones, you also create a more logical and consistent flow through your space. Finally, always test your layout by imagining how you'd walk through it. Now, you can do this by sketching a quick floor plan. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be perfectly in scale, just something to help you visualize the space. Then you trace how you walk through the space and identify any obstacles, awkward turns, or tight corners. Next, you can also use painter's tape on the floor to outline furniture before you commit to buying it. That way you have a true idea of scale within your space and you can avoid costly mistakes with purchasing and returning. Okay, for tip number 3, what you want to consider is all the constraints in your space. So consider your constraints, because I know it's counterintuitive to think that maybe designers wouldn't like constraints because we would want to go wild and have a blank slate, but the truth is we love constraints. There is nothing I love more in a project than limitations, and I'll explain why. Here's the thing. When you have limitations, like, oh, you can't do this, you can't move here, this doesn't work, you start to have to become truly creative. It's not just imagining whatever you want. You have to imagine things that work in that space. You have to find actual solutions. So the truth is, architects, designers, we love the constraints, and maybe you should embrace them too. So here's what you want to ask yourself. Start with, what's my budget? How much can I spend on this space? That's your first constraint. Next, are there fixed elements like windows, radiators, or built-ins? This is a constraint as well because these are elements that you cannot move or that are very costly to move. So it's another thing you kind of have to work with within your project. Next, are there architectural features I have to work around, like pillars, low ceilings, or staircases? And then by asking yourself these questions, you start to think, okay, now I have to think of all the solutions, because Pinterest will not show you your constraints, but designing well means embracing what you've got. All right, let me give you an example. Imagine you're designing a bedroom with a $5,000 budget, a fixed window placement that can't be moved, and an existing built-in closet. Those are your constraints. This means you can allocate part of your budget for a statement bed, but you'll need to select more budget-friendly nightstands. You also can't block the window with tall furniture, and you don't need to buy a wardrobe because of the built-in closet. See how your constraints narrow your decisions in a helpful way? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to start by listing all your constraints. That means architectural fixtures, your budget, anything that can't be moved. And next to each one of those items, you're going to put a comment on what that means for your space. So for example, if one of your constraints is a small window, you're going to put down a comment that you need to prioritize light colored furniture or mirrors in the space so that you can bounce back the little light that's coming in and you can turn it into lots of light by considering your restraints. Okay, before moving on to the next tip, I just want to reflect on something with you guys for a second. I really think you should embrace the constraints. It's something that is going to make your life so much better because it's a matter of perspective, right? You might sit in your room and look at your small window and think, oh, I'm never going to have a nice enough space. It's always going to be dark. This small window is ruining my room. And just kind of turn it into something bad and heavy when you can look at it with a completely different perspective and be like, that's a little window. I have little light. So what can I do to fix it? And you're going to put in the light furniture. You're going to keep the wall colors lighter as well. You're going to bring in large mirrors to reflect that light. And you're going to start thinking of all these different solutions that maybe would not have popped up had you just had large windows to begin with. And it'll make you a more creative thinker. It'll make you more capable of designing your space. And more than that, you won't have to linger on what's wrong. Instead, focus on what you can do to make it better. And honestly, I think limitations and the constraints, it's where creativity blossoms. It's where we get the best, most unexpected solutions. So embrace it. Don't linger on the small stuff. Don't linger on what's wrong. Think about what you can do and make it better. You've done it. You've made it. You can now go to Pinterest and just have a blast. pinning away. It is tip number 5 and you have finally made it. You can finally go to Pinterest and just have fun looking at all those images and pinning away. And that's because you have detailed all the most important functional aspects of your project, because now when you go to Pinterest, you will have your pro goggles on and you will be like, this is gorgeous, but this is absolutely not in line with my priorities. Next, this is amazing, but this does not work with my program. Out. And that way you will just funnel it into exactly what will make your space the best space for you and your necessities. While you're scrolling through Pinterest, this is what you're going to ask yourself. Does this idea serve my function? Remember your activities and reflect back on, does this help the activities of my space? Next, does it fit my flow and constraints? So can I walk through it? Is the scale correct for my space? Is it blocking anything? What are my constraints? And reflect on all of that when you're deciding what pictures you're going to use as inspiration. And finally, does it align with my priorities? So remember very clearly what it is you want from the space and always try and go back to what is going to help you achieve that. Only after you've checked those boxes can you finally ask yourself, does it look pretty? So this is how designers avoid creating beautiful but impractical spaces and instead design cohesive and personal interiors that actually work. So now that you're going to do your mood board, this is what you can actually do. Curate a digital mood board with 10 to 15 images that align with your functional goals and constraints. For each image, add a quick note about what inspires you. So for this image, it's the color palette. The next image, it's the layout. The third image might be material choices. So this way, your inspiration feels purposeful. And even though you can do more than 10 or 15 images, I find that pretty much on average, 10 to 15 images is a nice synthesis of the priorities and aesthetic of your project. So you don't have to waste hours and hours on this. Just choose the ones that fit, and that will give you a much more structured guideline to getting your space right. So now we're getting into tip number 6, and by now you have defined your program, you have mapped out your flow, you have considered your constraints, you have established your priorities, and you have a beautiful mood board to go with it. So what now? We're going to turn all of that plus your mood board into a fun, actionable plan to get your space right. So here's what your plan looks like. A floor plan that shows where everything goes. Nothing fancy, just a sketch. A materials list, so flooring, paint, finishes, furniture. Next, a color palette, 3 to 5 main colors that guide the mood. And finally, a furniture and shopping list with real products that fit your budget and constraints. This is the step that's going to turn your Pinterest dream into a design reality. So here's how you do it. For your floor plan, you're going to use graph paper to just kind of sketch it out. There are lots of apps you can use too. Remember, I always say nothing fancy, just something to help you visualize the entire room. For your materials list, you're going to visit showrooms and stores or order samples of paint, flooring, and fabric to see them in real light within your space. For your color palette, you choose a main neutral, an accent color, and 1 or 2 secondary shades. Test them together before committing. I will tell you guys more on this later, but right now I'm working on a color inspiration pack to go with the home checklist. And within that, you will have lots and lots of different color palettes to choose from, sorted by mood, style, and basically it'll just be a really great guide to help you through color, because color can be complicated. I know it, you know it, everybody knows it. So wait for it. When it's ready, I will let you guys know here on the channel. For your shopping list, always check product dimensions against your floor plan to ensure the fit, and remember to check whether they'll go through the door. You would be surprised how often people forget and you have to return furniture because it just didn't go through. So guys, the next time you feel overwhelmed by Pinterest perfection, don't, okay? Remember, pros start with the program, with the flow, with constraints, and you can too. And I absolutely promise that if you do this step by step, you will get the best results. So leave Pinterest for just a little later. Remember, decorating is a journey, not a sprint. So have fun and enjoy each individual step, because when you do, the whole composition becomes so much more efficient and beautiful. If you need any more help designing your space like a pro, I have the best resource. It is my home checklist. It's in the description below. You can go ahead, download it. It's absolutely free, and I promise you it will help you so much. It's a checklist that'll go room by room, so you can just check it off, and while you do that, you get all kinds of helpful tips, guides, schematics to just kind of make the process fun and not at all overwhelming. So go ahead, grab that. And finally, if you have any tips of your own, leave them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. And if this video helped in any way, gave you any useful info, drop us a like. And thank you so much for spending this time here with me. I'm really happy to be doing this, and I hope you'll be back next week because I will have more information going. All right, see you soon.